In order to protect the people mentioned in this story, I've changed a few names. My name is Bill, and this story is about my Uncle Frank. My Uncle Frank has been going through some tough times as of late on account of his ever-growing mental health issues. Bipolarism, if you're wondering. He was on medication to help balance him out, but then he lost his job about a month ago and went into a slight depression. My mom, who is his sister, has been helping him out by giving him a place to stay and making sure he takes his meds on time. Of course, my mom can't always be his babysitter, so some days he is off his meds. And this story takes place during one of those days. So I'm playing the OG Resident Evil 4 to prepare for the new remake coming out. And if I was playing another video game, I wouldn't be writing this story. But this particular game had a profound negative effect on my uncle's mental stability. Now, to give you some context, it's been a while since I've played the OG Resident Evil 4. So to put it bluntly, I suck at the game. I always get my head chopped off by the chainsaw Ganado. I can't solve a lot of the puzzles as easily as I could before. And more importantly, Ashley always gets caught by the enemy. Anyone who has played the original RE4 knows that every time Ashley gets caught, she cries like a little girl asking Leon for help. To most people, her cries are annoying, but what I didn't know was that to my uncle, it was a deadly trigger. So it was around 1 p.m. Saturday afternoon, and I'm on the couch in the living room playing a game while my uncle sleeps in my dad's recliner. My dad hates that, by the way. But since he's not there, my uncle can get away with it because I'm definitely not going to tell him to move. My mom works a job that requires her to work on Saturdays, and my dad has a 9 to 5, but he does Uber on the weekends to make some extra money and to keep himself busy. My little sister is asleep upstairs, so she can't really hear what's going on down here. So to paint the picture, it's just me and my uncle downstairs, along with a loud TV where I'm shooting zombies. I'm playing the castle part with all the religious cult fiends. And most people know that it's really hard to keep Ashley safe during that particular stretch of the game. Add on top of that I'm pretty much hot garbage after years of not playing, and it made for a pretty frustrating time. So at about the 20th time that Ashley got captured by the enemy, my uncle hears her cries and starts muttering in his sleep. He was saying stuff like, "No, Samantha, I'm coming for you, Samantha." Now the TV's pretty loud, but since I'm sitting right next to him, I can kinda hear what he's saying, which makes me pause the game so I can hear him a little better. I didn't find out till later who this Samantha person was, so at the time, I just thought he was having a nightmare. But I wasn't prepared for what he was about to do next. I resumed the game, and therefore Ashley's annoying cry could be heard loud and clear. And not even 10 seconds later, my uncle basically screams, "Get your effing hands off my baby girl!" He charges towards our 42-inch flat screen TV and takes it off its nightstand and slams it on the ground and just stomps it repeatedly. Now I'm 17 years old and decently athletic, but my uncle is pretty big. Not built, but he's got some solid fat on him that makes him hard to overpower. I was yelling at him, "Uncle Frank, what the hell are you doing? Stop, stop!" But nothing was getting through. My uncle wailed on the TV for a good 5 minutes before he said anything. "I told you to get your hands off of Samantha." It was one of the most awkward moments I've ever had in my life. I immediately called my dad to tell him what happened, but he was in the middle of a ride, so he had to call me back. Once he got my message, he switched off Uber and hurried home. After that incident, later that night, my mom and dad had a bit of an argument about what to do with Uncle Frank. My dad flat out just wanted him gone, but my mom couldn't just throw him out since he was her brother. But since she didn't have a leg to stand on after what happened, she lost the debate. Luckily, my dad is a very reasonable person, so my mom was able to convince him to give Frank a week to find a job and pay for the TV. My uncle ultimately found a job at Walmart, giving him access to the employee discount, meaning he got a replacement TV for pretty cheap. The new TV was able to calm my dad enough to allow Frank to stay. That event happened almost a month ago. But just last week, my mom told me who Samantha was. Apparently, my uncle had a 6-year-old niece who was kidnapped when he and his ex-wife were in the mall Christmas shopping. The story goes that Samantha cried out for my uncle the same way Ashley cries out for Leon. Her high-pitched wailing brought back some bad memories in my uncle's head, and his non-medicated bipolar mind just took over and went into autopilot. I was a little upset when my mom finally told me, because I could have definitely used that information earlier. I wouldn't have had the TV so loud if I had known. All in all, That experience gave me a newfound respect for people who deal with mental health patients, and it also gave me another reason to hate Ashley from the original RE4. I've been playing Resident Evil since I was a little kid. My dad introduced me to the game, and I never looked back. I used to walk into the living room with him playing it for hours on end, and I get kind of mad because I wanted to watch TV. But since he paid all the bills, I just had to sit there and watch him play, and eventually, I fell in love with the game. Pretty soon, I started playing it when he got tired or when he moved on to the next game. It sort of became a father-son bonding thing after a certain point. But that sacred father-son bonding activity turned into a constant reminder of one of the worst days of my life. During the pandemic, I couldn't do much for obvious reasons, so I stayed inside and just played video games. I always liked the OG Resident Evil 4, so that was one of my staples whenever I got too bored. One night in April of 2020, I was playing RE4. By the way, when I say RE4 from here on out, I mean the original, not the remake that's coming out soon. Personally, I like the remakes that came out before, but there's something about the original RE4 that has a bit of nostalgia to it. Anyway, I'm playing Resident Evil 4 during the beginning of the pandemic, so people are in full panic mode. Now, I don't usually get visitors, and if I do, it's family coming to check on me or ask me for something because I have a pretty decent job. That comes with the territory when your immediate family lives within only 5 miles of your house. So, when the doorbell rang on that seemingly normal April day, at like 4 p.m., I didn't think anything of it. I opened the door and no one was there. Of course, I was a little confused at first, but I live in a neighborhood with a lot of rambunctious kids, so I immediately blamed it on ding-dong ditchers. After standing on my front stoop for like 5 seconds, I just chalked it up and went back to playing my game. And I played it for another 5 hours. By the time 9 p.m. hit, I was a bit tired, so I decided to make a quick snack and go to sleep. While I'm in the kitchen fixing my food, I thought I heard something like a scratching sound coming from my back door. But I don't have any pets, so there shouldn't be anybody clawing to try to get in. Naturally, I went to go check it out, but before I could turn the handle, the doorbell rang again. Now at the time, I didn't think both events were related, but I quickly found out they were, and in a very bad way. I do an about face and head towards my front door to see who could possibly be coming to my house at 9 p.m. at night. And as I am about 10 feet from the door, I hear what sounds like my back doorknob turning in my kitchen. At that point, my mind went immediately into security mode, since I'm a dude living by myself in my mid-20s with a well-paying job. And I'm not afraid to show people that I have a little money. You know, expensive cars, fancy lawn designs, stuff like that. But I'm not naive, so I know that makes me an easy target for would-be thieves, robbers, or home invaders. It hasn't dawned on me yet that the two people at my front and back door are working together. So I tell the person who's at my front door 1 minute before I go see what the noise was at my back door. When I get into my kitchen, I don't see anything unusual. The dishes are still in the sink. The kitchen table still has the pizza from last night, and the trash bags are still behind the trash can. At first, I kind of laugh at myself for getting so jumpy, but people who live by themselves will understand. I walk back towards the front door to see who this visitor is, when I see that my front door is now slightly open. Now I'm in full panic mode. I slowly walk around my house to see if I can find someone. I start with the living room before going upstairs to check the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom. I go back downstairs and start making my way to the kitchen, once again not seeing anything unusual inside of my living or dining room. Even though I already checked the kitchen, I gave it another look, and my heart sank when I realized that one of my trash bags had moved. Whoever these people were, they were still in my house, and they knew my layout well enough to find hiding places inside of it. I have a pretty open concept of floor plan, so if you look in my window, you can see through both my living room and dining room, but my kitchen is still closed off by walls. As I jog back to the living room, I'm thinking to myself, where the hell could the dude who came through the front door be hiding? Because there's not many places in my living room to hide to begin with. That's when I remembered. I have a living room closet. I look over to the closet, and I see an eye looking through the crack right at me. I raised my bat and charged the closet, but I was tackled from behind by the other goon who was hiding in my kitchen. They started to beat the crap out of me. Thankfully, I didn't lose consciousness. But them kicking me did not feel nice. Eventually, I stopped moving, not because they knocked me out, but because I figured playing dead was my only option at this point. And it actually worked. They stopped beating on me, but only to ransack my place and take any loose cash I had lying around, along with my PS4 and wallet. They probably would have taken a lot more if I wasn't lying on the ground playing dead. I figured they were trying to hurry before I woke up, because they weren't sure if I were dead or not. At the end of the entire ordeal, I called the cops and tell them what happened. They arrive and ask me the usual questions, like did I get a good look at them, but clearly I didn't because I was at the bottom of their boots as they were stomping me. However, I did get a voice because one of the hooligans said, "Maybe you should keep your windows closed next time, dumbass," as he was leaving with my valuables. The police never found him, but considering I only lost a PS4 and some replaceable credit cards, I think I made it out pretty well. By the way, if you're wondering what that lowlife was referring to, I live in a relatively safe neighborhood, so I like to keep my windows open. But after the pandemic has made everyone either crazy or desperate, I don't believe I will be making that same mistake again. Okay, this just happened to me, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm an 18-year-old female who's home for spring break, and typically I would keep an event like this to myself. But my college advisor has informed me that it's better to write out things that are bothering you. My friends introduced me to various forums on the internet and told me a story like this does not belong in my diary. So here I am. As soon as I get home for spring break, my parents told me that we have new neighbors, and one of the neighbor's sons is rather loud, and his room is directly connected to mine. My parents have asked his parents to tell him to keep it down, because even though my parents' room is a little further down the hall, they can hear him too. The couple next door always says they'll ask him to keep it down going forward, but my mom doesn't believe they have any intentions of approaching their son about the noise. The thing is, he's 21 and quite large, so the parents are probably scared of him. They basically tell me to expect loud noises at night, and that I should invest in some earmuffs to block some of it out. So, spring break carries on, and their son is in his room playing some video game. I believe a new game came out recently called Resident Evil 4 Remake, which involves a dude named Leon killing a bunch of people and saving a girl. I don't know. I did some research, but I didn't care enough to really get into it. All I know is there's a lot of loud gunshots, a bunch of Spanish people yelling Spanish things, and screaming. Lots of screaming. With how loud his TV is, you would think his volume control button is broke. But I'm not writing this story to vent about my noisy neighbors, so here goes the real juicy part. Yesterday, there were the usual loud TV gunshots from 4 p.m. to about 9 p.m. Now don't get me wrong, he didn't stop because he's a good little boy who's considerate of his neighbors and doesn't want to make too much noise at night. No, he played till 4 a.m. the next day if he could, and he has done that. He only stopped because his parents were arguing, which isn't a rare occurrence. But last night's argument was really bad. I can't remember the details, but I remember the wife saying something along the lines of, "You stay out all night with that bitch and come home smell like perfume, and I'm sick of this shit." So you can fill in the blanks. Of course, his father was denying it up and down, but the mother was steadfast that daddy was cheating and said she was going to leave him and keep all the stuff he ever gave her. For some reason, that set him off like a rocket, and he just went into a blind rage. He said if his wife ever tried to take anything away from him, she would not see tomorrow. Me being 18, I've heard some pretty bad stuff, either in real life or on TV, but I've never heard it so close to home. After those first couple of exchanges, things quieted down for a little bit because his son got tired of them yelling and went out there to calm everybody down. Given his size, it worked rather well because he started yelling even louder than his parents. That means that about 30 minutes later, after it seemed like everybody had made up, more gunshots and loud Spanish people cursing. By that time, I had gotten so used to the sound of gunshots, they were starting to sound like a lullaby. Only, these gunshots sounded different. They sounded a lot louder than they had been before. Those gunshots did not come from the game. Next thing I hear is our neighbor's wife telling her husband to put the gun down. Then I heard another pop, and I didn't hear our lovely female neighbor ever again. Then the big bad son went to go tackle his dad to the ground and wrestle for the gun, but Papa must have got the better of him because I heard another pop, followed by the son's loud yelling. Then it was silent, but not for too long. Not even 7 minutes later, the police were knocking at their door, threatening to break it down. With only so few options left, the patriarch of the next door family put the gun to his head and let off one final bang. And I didn't hear another gunshot for the rest of the night. I never thought I would be privy to such a horrific event like a murder-suicide of one's family, but life comes at you fast. And I know this makes me sound like a bad person, but I would be lying if I didn't say I didn't enjoy the peace and quiet that came afterwards. Of course, I had to deal with all the noise of the many police officers coming and going inside our next-door neighbor's house, but that was nothing compared to what I was dealing with for the past week. Well, there's my story. And to be honest, I'm still working through everything that happened, because even though I wasn't directly involved, that was still a very traumatic experience. Let me start the story off by saying video games don't really scare me, but something happened to me while playing one that gave me a real appreciation for the realistic atmosphere they can create. So the new Resident Evil 4 remake demo dropped not too long ago, and I've basically been playing it non-stop since it came out. I'm a big Resident Evil fan, and these games are one of my biggest addictions. The game isn't very scary, although the remake demo did get me a few times. It's more so about the nostalgic feeling that I get from playing the game, and the Resident Evil 2 remake set up the new Resident Evil 4 game pretty well. I've come to really like Leon's character in the whole series, but the developers really upped how realistic the guns and chainsaws sound in the demo, and that fact is going to be really important later. Before I tell you the rest of the story, I must tell you a bit about myself. I'm a very animated player when I play video games, especially when I'm playing the Resident Evil series. I'll shout stuff like "Die, you bastard," and "I just killed you, dummy." You know, childish stuff like that. My family hates it, but they've gotten used to it because I do it with every single game I play. Eventually, my dad got sick of it and just soundproofed my door. So now no sound comes through that door and I can play it in peace. The only thing is, he soundproofed it for my door, but not the surrounding walls. So my sister, who's in the next room over, can still hear me. And more importantly, my neighbors can still hear me. That means they can hear all my crazy ranting and shouting as if I was a maniac who escaped from a mental institution. Now normally, my neighbors would just pound on the wall and tell me to shut the hell up. But recently, the neighbors on my right side had a family member move in who was a war veteran from the Iraq-Afghan war. He wasn't too old, but he did have severe PTSD. And to be honest, I never knew how serious PTSD could be before this happened. A couple of Fridays after the demo came out, I decided to stay up a little later and play the new Resident Evil 4 demo for like the 5th time. Now of course I'm cursing at the TV and yelling like an idiot, thinking no one can hear me, except maybe my sister, but I don't really care about that. But then I heard another gunshot. Then I heard a second one, and that's when I realized it wasn't coming from the game. And that was followed up by a burning sensation in my arm. I looked to my left and realized I have 2 holes in my walls now. I hear cursing through my walls saying I'm going to stop torturing those people with chainsaws. Like I said, very realistic. I burst out of my room and run to my parents' room to tell them what just happened, and that I've been shot. Fortunately, our neighbor was only able to get 2 shots off before his family came into the room to restrain him. Both houses met each other outside to explain what just happened, and both the husband and wife and even the kids were apologizing profusely. It turns out that the man who shot me was the husband's brother. He was only 45 years old, but he experienced so much hell when he was in Afghanistan that it left a permanent mark on his psyche. He actually thought that I was torturing people in my room because of the loud chainsaw sounds and the gunshots, and he told his family as much. So I went to the emergency room and got a couple of stitches. Luckily it was just a flesh wound that didn't hit any bones. Now of course I could be very upset, and at first I was a little bit, But after hearing his story and what he's been through, on top of knowing that his family sent him somewhere to get help, I couldn't help but feel bad for him. And if I'm going to be honest, I think being shot at the age of 16 is one of the coolest things you can tell your friends when you go back to school the next Monday. I never liked scary things growing up, whether it was movies or games. So you can imagine my dismay when I saw my brother get excited about this new video game called Resident Evil 4, because I knew I was going to have to listen to him play it in the living room. He's only 13, but my parents were always soft when it came to restricting him from R-rated stuff. I'm sure it probably has something to do with him being a boy and wanting him to be a tough man or something or another. I don't care, I just know it's really annoying. So I thought I would have until March 24th before I would be annoyed by his constant game playing, but apparently there was a demo that came out yesterday. He's already finished it like 6 times, but he keeps on replaying it and it got really annoying. Normally I wouldn't mind my brother playing his game with me being his older sister because I want to see him happy, but those scary games give me nightmares. And those nightmares are the reason why I'm writing this post. It's only been a day since he's been playing that stupid game and already I had my first nightmare. Last night I had a dream that I was looking through those binoculars that Leon guy looks through when he sees his cop friend get burned to death. Spoiler alert, by the way, although I'm not sure if I'm really spoiling anything. Anyway, instead of seeing a burnt up cop through those binoculars, I saw a house with a very long bridge in front of it above green water, which was matched by an equally green sky. I walk over the bridge into the house to find it filled with dolls that have the same insignia of that creepy game. The insignia that's on the door all the village people walk through when that Leon guy says his corny bingo line. So I start walking through the dolls for some reason. I don't know why. I think I was looking for something. Eventually I pick up a doll, but it became so heavy, extremely heavy, to the point where I had to drop it. And once I dropped this doll, it transformed into an 8-foot sharp-toothed grotesque looking monster. I know it sounds cliche, but most of my dreams are. I look around for a weapon, but I can't find one, so I start backing up slowly. I throw anything I can get my hands on, lamps, chairs, I even threw pillow cushions. Eventually I was able to make my way to the door, and I ran out of that house as fast as I possibly could. When I got back to the bridge, every rung that I stepped on started to wobble, and they would drop 2 seconds later after putting my weight on them. Luckily for me, that meant the monster couldn't follow me across the bridge, but that also meant I had to run fast, or the monster across the bridge would have been the least of my worries. Thankfully I make it across, but as I go back to where it all began, that chainsaw guy pops up and cuts my head off. And then I wake up screaming. Because of all the noise, my mom calls me on my phone to see what's wrong. I tell her I have a bad dream, and she makes a joke about me being too old for that. I yelled at her to leave me alone and hung up. I don't know when, but eventually I got back to sleep, and I didn't have any more dreams after that creepy first one. But my nightmare still isn't over because I wake up to the sound of my brother playing that annoyingly creepy game.